Hi, and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 1070B, and today's date is September 8th, 2016, and the title of the episode is DHS Reports That Hacking the Elections is Nearly Impossible. Let's get into the economic collapse, political, and geopolitical news. Now, we've talked a lot about George Soros and his Open Society Foundation and the leaked documents from that, and we're seeing some more information, and we can see why everything that the president is doing, we can see why he's doing it. Because George Soros, his Open Society Foundation, well, they held a board meeting at which the organization discussed how it could further use the president's executive action authority to bypass Congress during Obama's final 2 terms in office. And what they said is that their goals was to use the last 2 terms because people really don't pay attention to the president. They don't think he has any power. They can use this time period and have the president just continually create executive orders, and no one will question it. And this is exactly what is happening. Because people believe the president's powers are in decline, and during this period they think he's not going to do anything, and behind closed doors he's creating these executive orders. And we can see prior to this that he's created many executive orders to bypass Congress. The latest one was the executive order to offshore the Zika vaccine, because Congress turned down the proposal to fund the problem with the Zika virus, which is, of course, a made-up problem from the government. So Obama used these powers, and we can see they study this type of information. They study how the people react, and they look at it and they say, yes, we can do it at this time period. This is what think tanks do. They look at the entire situation, and they come up with all these different plans on how the different countries, the people, how they're all going to react, and then they put the plans in motion. We see the Brookings Institute. This is one of their plans in Syria, where they were looking to create this safe zone, this exclusive zone, this no-bomb zone, this no-fly zone. And we can see this is already being done out in that area. Now, out in Ukraine, we see the United States and Ukraine, they agreed to cooperate on defense technology and improve Ukraine's forces, which will boost Ukrainian defense. So U.S. Defense Secretary Ash Carter also named a senior U.S. advisor to oversee the effort. And we can see that person is Stephen Poltorak. He signed the partnership agreement. And we can see right now that the U.S. is going to be bringing in advisors to help the situation. Didn't we have advisors go into Iraq? And they told us that that's all they are. They're not going to be getting into any type of combat. And now all those advisors they're in combat. Actually, this happened in Vietnam, where they said they were just bringing in advisors, and they're not going to be in any type of combat, and they ended up in combat. So here we have the same situation once again, where they're going to be bringing in U.S. advisors, which eventually they will go into combat. They've already been in combat in Ukraine. We've already had videos of this. We've already seen the soldiers on the front lines. We reported on this a while back. But what we're seeing right now is the preparation to do an all-out offensive. They tried many different ways, and they failed. They tried to destroy the infrastructure in Crimea. Didn't work out. They started to shell the southeastern people to have them do something. And now it looks like they're taking the next step. We see out in the South China Sea, the United States government central bankers, they are pushing and provoking as hard as they possibly can. But Russia is out there. And Russia is calling against third-party countries who are getting involved in the South China Sea to remove themselves from the situation. And this is coming from Russian Deputy Foreign Minister. He said, "Our position on the situation in the South China Sea remains unchanged. Russia considers that the disputes in the South China Sea should be solved by the direct parties in a format that they believe is acceptable, and other countries should stay out of it." And what he's really saying is that the United States should just stay out of that entire scenario. But we know the United States government central bankers, they're not going to be staying out of that scenario. They're actually making that scenario, and they're provoking war. We see that the United States, with its advisors, they'll be sending 500 more troops into Iraq for the Battle of Mosul. And we know this is not against the Islamic State. We understand in Iraq there are people in that country that just don't like the United States. And I don't mean the people of the United States. I mean the U.S. government, the central bankers. And they want them out of their country. They don't like the puppet government, and we see this happening in Yemen, we see it in Libya, we see it in Lebanon, we see it in Iraq, we see it in Sudan. And we can see right now the U.S. and other coalition forces, they need to hold on to Iraq. They need to hold on to Libya. And we see the U.S. getting involved in the Middle East once again, bringing in more and more troops, because it's getting harder and harder because the people are fighting back. Turkey has agreed to allow German lawmakers to visit soldiers stationed at the Incirlik Air Base. Before, they told them that they could not come. They don't have permission, but it looks like they dropped that, and they're allowing Germany to come on in and talk to their soldiers. Now, we understand that Turkey is building a safe zone in northern Syria. They're clearing it out, and we can see they're getting ready to set it up, because they're building underground power lines to supply the town of Jarablus in Syria with electricity. And of course, everyone's thinking, oh, this is a good thing. They're going to be helping the people. No, what they're doing is they're setting it up to bring in equipment, make sure they have electricity, cordon off the entire area to start setting up this safe zone. And we can see they're going to be going deeper and deeper into Syria. And the situation there is really starting to build up. Now, the U.S. is making allegedly their last offer to Russia for peace. And they have preconditions. And when we look at this, it looks like they're asking Russia, do you accept? And we can see this is kind of a setup here. Because when we look at the conditions and what they want, it's pretty much the same thing that they've been saying all along. They will set up a truce, but they want the Syrian Air Force to stop flights, to stop bombing. They don't want their moderate rebels hit anymore, which are the terrorist groups. They will join in with Russia to go after the Islamic State, what is ever left of them. And we can see right now they want Assad removed. Now, Russia might look at this and say, okay, you know what? Maybe we will go ahead and go with what the United States wants, so this way we don't have war. But they know in the end, the U.S. is not going to live up to what they're saying, because their goal is to get Assad. And we can see right now that if Russia says these terms are unacceptable, which they've done before, what is the U.S. going to do? What is their next move? Now, once Russia does say these are unacceptable, the United States government central bankers are going to turn this around and say, we put forth a peace deal to Russia. They don't want peace. They haven't accepted it, which means they want war. And this is how they're going to promote this propaganda and tell people what has happened. But we can see right now, this is the same conditions they've always had. Nothing has changed, but we'll have to wait to see what Russia does and see how they handle this situation. Now, Turkey would like to work with the United States, and they would like to go after the capital in Raqqa. And they like to get rid of the Islamic State. They like to take part take over that area. And we know why this is being done. This is all part of the plan to create this safe zone, this exclusive zone, because as we know, the United States has built 2 bases inside of Syria, which they didn't get permission to do. We know France has done the same thing, which they didn't get permission to do. And we know from all of the actions of Turkey, they are still on the side of removing Assad. Because look, they went into Syria, they invaded. They went into Syria, they invaded a sovereign country. They didn't ask permission. They're going deeper and deeper into the country. They're even building underground power lines to an area. Have they closed their borders yet? No. This is why we look at their actions and not what they say. Because we can see from the actions of Turkey, the United States and Turkey, they're still on their mission. They haven't deviated from it. Turkey might be getting closer to Russia economically, but on the war front, they're not listening. They're listening to the United States. So we know the elections are coming up, and we know we have a problem with the voting system. And if you don't know, yes, the voting system can be manipulated. But don't worry. The Department of Homeland Security, Secretary Jay Johnson, he is downplaying the concerns about malicious hackers influencing the U.S. elections. He said while hackers in the U.S. or abroad might be able to steal data from the individual election officials, he said that it would be very, very difficult to skew the overall vote count. Well, this makes perfect sense. Since hackers can break into financial institutions, manipulate the numbers, steal the currency out from under their noses. It's amazing how the hackers can use malware and bring down a power grid, but they just won't have the ability to skew the numbers in a voting system. Well, maybe he didn't see the documentary Hacking Democracy, where Bev Harris showed how easy it is to manipulate the votes. And I know they're saying, and this is coming from James Comey, well, the voting system is not connected to the internet, so it would be quite impossible for a hacker to, get into every single system because our system is clumsy, it's old, and some is computerized, some is not. They have to remember that the manipulation comes from the top. There's not going to be a hack. The only hack is going to be from those individuals who are in power. When the so-called cards, the so-called information is received by each voting district, that's where it takes place, from the top. The system is already rigged. And if you watch Hacking Democracy, they show how it is possible, just one way of how it's possible. And we can see right now, they're out there telling people this because people are out there saying that the system is rigged, the system is manipulated. And they're also building up the propaganda that something might go wrong, even though they're telling us it won't. Because they will make the case to show the world, oh, look, it didn't go our way, so this is what happened. They might even say, listen, we have signs that something happened. We might have to redo the election. They might even go that route. We will see. We see that according to a White House top counterterrorism official, Nick Rasmussen, he is saying that the terrorist threat facing the U.S. and Europe is bigger and wider and deeper than before. And 15 years after September 11th, we are due for some type of an event. So they're expecting something to happen, which means most likely they have something planned at a later date. And if you ever notice, when these officials come out and they tell us that Oh, we have information there's going to be a terror attack. Oh, we believe that this is going to happen. If you ever notice, this never happens. Nothing ever happens when they tell us. When they have all this information. When they don't have any information, when they didn't even detect it, they had no idea that it was even possible that it could happen on this date, it happens. And the reason for this is because, one, is propaganda, and two, that attack, that event that they had no knowledge of, well, they did have knowledge because it was an inside job. They planned it. They can't tell the people that it's happening because they'll say, why didn't you stop it? They don't want to stop it. They want it to happen, to put people into fear. All of this is propaganda to keep people in fear, to take away their rights, and to make them dependent on the government. This is what this is all about. And as we get closer and closer, and as the system continually falls apart, we can see that they're going to continually keep this up. Now, we have other information from people who write into me. I'm only going to pronounce their first names. This is from CLD, and he says, I continually talk about a big event, and he is saying that we've already had or seen some of their workings where the airlines had a glitch, like United Airlines, Delta Airlines, British Airways, and everyone was stranded. And they observed what people have done. They observed how they reacted. And by looking at the reaction, by seeing what people do, and controlling the people in these situations, they're already learning what is happening. And we can see that Homeland Security during these situations, they threatened people with jail if they got out of hand or breached security. And like sheep, people, were at the mercy of a transportation system. And they had to follow whatever the authorities told them to do. And they watch and they observe, because when the system all comes down, they like to know the reactions of the people. We're getting other information, this is coming from John, that something is happening in Ireland where banks are going to shut down on September 30th. Now, it doesn't mean that this is, the apocalypse. What he's saying is that, coming from a banking source, that on September 30th, the IMF will introduce a new special drawings right SDRS to replace existing ones. And this is apparently linked to gold stock and plans to introduce a new international monetary system. And we can see right now that ATM machines, they might not work in Ireland for about 10 days or so. And we can see that something is happening at this point. And people are continually writing in from all over the world giving me this information. Now, I can't prove that this is what's going to happen, but these are dates, this is information that I believe should be out there, that people should look at to see what is going on. And we should understand that there are people all around the world that are looking at this situation just like we're looking at it in the United States, and they're seeing the same exact thing, where the system is falling apart, the economies are not doing well, something is happening in their countries. Just like in Germany, they're telling the people to prepare for 10 days for some type of an event. Just make sure you have some type of preps. And we can see that people are getting very, very nervous out there as we move into this fall, as the economy deteriorates, as we approach the elections, as war is at our doorstep. Things are heating up right now. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.